Let's go live to the Nationals' Senate Leader Bridget McKenzie. Thanks for your time. Lots to talk about. Let's start with the sanctions against the Israeli ministers. You heard what the Deputy Prime Minister said there. There are others, I think, certainly internally within Israel as well, that would agree with our government's approach. They've been fiercely critical of those two ministers, including the former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert of Israel, who's been scathing of the Netanyahu government and those two ministers in particular.
Well, I think in any domestic political situation, Kieran, you will always find critics of ministers of any creed or colour in a vibrant liberal democracy. So I don't think that's having criticism internally to a country isn't a reason to sanction ministers that are democratically elected, even if you don't agree with what they say. I think these sanctions do go against the intent of the Magnitsky sanction regime, and we want to understand more deeply the rationale behind the government's decision-making. What I didn't hear the Defence Minister talk about was Hamas surrendering. I heard a lot of talk about returning of hostages, dead or alive, and that has to happen before ceasefire. But if you're actually interested in peace in Gaza, peace in the Middle East, ceasefire has to occur, and the precursors are return the hostages, dead or alive, and Hamas surrender. Then a genuine ceasefire process can get underway and we can work towards a negotiated two-state solution in the long term, but in the short term, ending the war in Gaza.
The Deputy Prime Minister was quite comfortable with the review out of the Pentagon. Similar message from the former Prime Minister Scott Morrison earlier on the program, seemingly relaxed about what we're seeing out of the Pentagon and this review, that it's simply what a newly elected administration would do when it comes to AUKUS. Do you share that view?
Well, I think the review is concerning. I think it adds to the long task list of issues that the Prime Minister will have to raise with the President next week. You know, the reality is we have a very real vulnerability, and these very strategic, long-standing alliances are critical to our security. So AUKUS and our strategic relationship with the United States has to be the primary concern of the Prime Minister. And we in the coalition obviously wish him every success in strengthening that relationship and not weakening it. And if you try to deal with these things in isolation, you know, I think it becomes very difficult when you're critical of the US's stance on many issues and then seek their strategic support to the level we do need it. I mean, the reality is we can't defend ourselves. And so I think we wish the Prime Minister every success in strengthening our relationship with the US next week.
When you make reference to that, are you talking about the sanctions on the Israeli ministers, for example? Are you saying that sort of clouds our broader bilateral alliance and relationship?
Well, I think there's no, you know, there are a lot of critics of President Trump personally and his administration more broadly within the Labor Party. Some of them have been quiet and some of them not so quiet. There's even critics within the Labor caucus of AUKUS itself. And I think people need to have a serious reality check here. We don't spend enough on defence. We can't defend ourselves without these long-standing special relationships. And so we need to take that all into consideration when making foreign policy announcements. The reality is Minister Wong's decision to sanction these two Israeli democratically elected ministers does fly in the face of the long-standing bipartisan approach to Israel, to a negotiated two-state solution. And so instead of taking us into her confidence and having and continuing that bipartisan approach, they've chose to go it alone. So, you know, I don't think you can have it both ways, Kieran, I really don't. And I hope the government isn't trying to do that, because these are very challenging times globally and we need to keep our friends really close.
Nationals Senate Leader Bridget McKenzie, thanks. We'll catch you next week.